Thank you very much for joining us this morning to celebrate the 2022 Presidential Awards for Distinguished Service in International Education. My name is Valeria Bertacco, and I serve as a Vice Provost for Engaged Learning. The Presidential Award for Distinguished Service in International Education, we call it PADSI, is a young award established by Michigan President Schlissel in 2017 to celebrate and recognize the extraordinary effort of our faculty and staff in advancing international education for our Michigan students. You're all well aware of how critical international education is in offering a well-rounded experience to our students. Each year, our university offers hundreds of unique opportunities to our students, thanks to the work of our passionate faculty and staff dedicated to organize such rich offering. For the first time this year, and thanks to the support of President Mary Sue Coleman, the award recognizes two individuals instead of one, a faculty member and a staff member. Our selection committee worked very hard to identify two award recipients among a pool of 18 spectacular nominations. Indeed, I wish to take this opportunity to extend my heartfelt thank you to the members of the selection committee for their extensive and thoughtful work in discussing and evaluating each nomination. A year ago, we gathered, actually at the Union, to celebrate the 2021 awardee. The experience was unique, as it was the first in-person celebration hosted by U of M on the way to restore regular human connections after the lockdowns of the pandemic. From my own perspective, even a year later, I'm still basking in the enjoyment of the warmth and energy that this group, gathered in person, brings to our celebration. Indeed, I wish to thank you all for coming here today on account of the award recipient. In addition, this year, the celebration is marked by the opportunity to sit down with our newly appointed President Santa Ono to converse about the roles of international partnership and education in academic institutions. Today, we also celebrate the return of international travel and engagement after a difficult period of limited mobility. While U of M study abroad has not yet returned to pre-pandemic levels, nearly 3,000 students participated in an international experience in the past academic year. Schools and colleges have renewed interest in establishing and renewing international agreements to facilitate academic and scientific cooperation, student exchanges, visiting scholar programs, internships, and more. At present, we have 250 active international agreements with institutions in 59 countries across the globe. And finally, this year, we have the largest cohort of international students to date on our campus, 8,880 students, who make up 17% of our student body. Indeed, our international engagement is resuming in full force, and I couldn't be more excited about the possibility these open up for our institutions in the future. And now, without further ado, let me welcome President Santa Ono. Before joining U of M, Dr. Ono was president at the University of British Columbia, and is no stranger to international engagement. At UBC, he launched a global engagement strategy to advance global citizenship with faculty, staff, and students, making a global impact and serving the world. I look forward to today's conversation about global engagement in Michigan. Please welcome President Santa Ono.
Well, thank you, Valeria, and it's really wonderful to see all of you in this beautiful room here. And I'm looking forward to honoring two icons to international education here at the University of Michigan, an institution that's admired around the world for its impact and its reach in each of the disciplines that Michigan excels. And good morning to all of you. I am so pleased to begin my day with you to present these President's Awards for Distinguished Service in International Education. These are the very first awards I've presented at this institution at week 2, so it's just as special a day for me as it is for our deserving recipients. Since its inception in 2017, this award has been an opportunity to highlight faculty, and now faculty and staff, who go above and beyond in connecting our students, at the University of Michigan with a truly global learning experience. And as we will be discussing later today, that's a priority for this institution, to develop global citizens. International education has undoubtedly changed forever these last few years, not just in the context of the pandemic, but also, as you know, the geopolitical tensions that are so evident every day when you follow the news. After more than 2 years of worldwide lockdowns and border closures, which I suffered going back and forth between Canada and the United States even, we have a newfound appreciation for sharing and understanding diverse and rich cultures and perspectives. We have a yearning as a collective group of scholars to re-engage and to build those bridges which are more important now than ever before. We can only change our world if we better understand our world. And I'm very proud that Michigan is a leader in this endeavor in every sense of the word. I'd like to now tell you more about our 2 recipients for the 2022 President's Award for Distinguished Service in International Education. I will then ask each of them to join me on the stage, and I will sit back down because they may be 4 to 5 minutes, but who knows, a little bit longer, to give their own remarks and their perspective and the context in which we are honoring them today. I want to start with Dr. Timothy R.B. Johnson. And those middle initials are very important because there are quite a few Timothy Johnsons around the world, even here. And I had the privilege of meeting with Timothy at a football game early on in my tenure here. And before I met him, everyone in the room said, he is an icon, not only in Michigan medicine, but also in an international outreach. And we have this opportunity to recognize all he's done with this major award today. Our faculty recipient, as I said, the first one, is Dr. Timothy R.B. Johnson. Dr. Johnson first began working with medical schools in Ghana more than 30 years ago, when he combined his medical and teaching experience to confront a major problem. Maternal mortality rates in Ghana were devastatingly high. Many of these deaths were preventable with enough resources and training. He set out to fill in those gaps, partnering with local healthcare workers to expand and improve medical training programs in Ghana. From the very beginning, the partnerships he established were fully equitable and reciprocal ones. Instead of working with a select few hospitals in Ghana, he committed to partnering with all of them. And as he developed pathways for University of Michigan's OBGYN students to study and learn in Ghanaian hospitals, he ensured equally robust opportunities for Ghanaian students visiting the University of Michigan. He always takes to heart the interests and goals of each medical student and trainee that he encounters, and always finds a way for them to succeed on their own terms. His sustainable programming has paved the way for other clinical research and educational collaborations between Michigan and hospitals in Ghana. With his steadfast focus on long-term outcomes, he has strengthened the medical knowledge, cultural experience, and support system of countless students and doctors on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. Congratulations, Dr. Johnson, and thank you for your ceaseless dedication. Congratulations, everyone. I'd now like to ask Dr. Johnson to join me on stage. And I am to present you the award and pose for a photograph. Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Please, your remark.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here this morning to receive this award from a university that I love and from our new president. Thank you all for being here this morning to recognize the importance of international education for our students here on this campus. As President Odo said, I started working in Ghana in 1986. It was one of those kind of serendipitous occasions, and somebody said, hey, would you like to go give some talks? And 30 years ago, I'm still going back once or twice a year because I fell in love with education and educational opportunities on the African continent. One of the things, though, is that I was very busy. I'm a high-risk obstetrician. I had a busy research lab. I was director of medical education and resident education at Hopkins before I came here to Michigan. And I didn't have a whole lot of time, and so I decided that one of the things that I was going to do was just focus on one country, and I think that's a really important lesson. So I decided that Ghana was going to be my focus, and when I talk to students, I often say, why don't you concentrate on one country instead of trying to have a broad swath, that you can really, first of all, develop long-term sustainable partnerships and relationships with people, which is the crux of what we do every day, right? This is about relationships. This is about personal relationships, the kind of relationships that we have with our students, that we have with our faculty, that we have with our mentors. And I think that's why this worked for me in an educational context. I taught medical students, I taught residents, I taught fellows in the United States, and so those are the kinds of programs that I established in Ghana, and they were all university-based. Part of my story is that I engaged academic universities because they had kind of deep roots in the community, and once you establish something in a university, the good news is that it never goes away. The bad news is that it never goes away, but change certainly happens, and that's what's happened in Ghana. So when I started working there in 1986, there were 4 trained OBGYNs in Ghana. All of them had trained in the UK. Last summer, we had graduate students who were working there. There are 246 people who've now trained in OBGYN in Ghana. 6 of them, unfortunately, have died. 3 of them went back to their own African country. But 236 of them are still practicing OBGYN in Ghana. And the maternal mortality has gone down because those OBGYNs have trained midwives and medical students and anesthesiologists, and the trickle-down effects for public health have been huge. And so I think there are real great opportunities for universities to do that, and Michigan has now expanded its programmatic involvement to Ethiopia and to other parts of Africa as well, where we've developed platforms of excellence, really. All of you in this room are supporters of this international education, and I want to point out how important support is, because there are huge global disparities, there are huge global inequities in the resources that academic institutions have. We are a rich public university, but function to a large extent independently. Universities in sub-Saharan Africa, at least, don't have that ability. They don't have the endowments that we have. They get all their resources from the Ministry of Health. They don't have kind of the philanthropic resources that we have of individual donors. They're starting to see now people who are supporters from industry. And Ghana now has an endowed professorship that was given by one of the oil companies. But we need to think about how we can provide financial resources. And so it's very important that financial support from philanthropic individuals be a priority for the University of Michigan so that we can make this equitable. Our students often have the capacity to support to some extent their international travel, and the Dean's Office in the medical school provides this support. There's lots of support that comes from Central Campus, and a lot of that comes from resources in the International Institute and things like that. But students in Africa don't have those kinds of resources. Universities in Africa don't have those kinds of resources. So for us to have these kind of sustainable partnerships, all of us in this room are going to have to work to develop the support, the financial support, not only for our students, but for the partners who are coming and matching those students that are coming from other countries, so that our students can develop the kind of relationships that I developed with young Ghanaian faculty members who are now deans and provosts and have moved up into to leadership positions in Ghana, and who are just medical students when we started. So we have a lot of work to do, and some of that work is work around fundraising and raising the funds so that Michigan can maintain its leadership role, because Michigan has followed a very ethical path of doing this. Michigan has focused on bilaterality, equality, diversity, all the values that we have talked about as we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion come out really in force when we talk about international education. And the disparities that exist between the global north and the global south are something that universities can work to correct. That's what I've been doing for my career, and I think the students that we've trained and the students that we will train will continue to do that, because I think Michigan has a reputation around the world for being an equitable, fair partner that's really interested in sustainable partnerships and partnerships for the long term. 30 years is just the beginning. I hope that Michigan continues this in the future, and I thank everyone very much for this award.
Well, I told you you're going to be inspired, and thank you so much for that context, and thanks for all that you've done for the University of Michigan. It now gives me great pleasure to recognize our staff recipient, Dr. Judith Pennywell. And Judith told me that she's been here at University of Michigan for about 7 years. That's a beautiful number. That's my favorite number, by the way. And told me that you arrived here from the University of Miami, and we're so pleased that you're here. Oh, interesting. By the way, Julio Frank, who, as you know, is a proud Michigan grad, he and I have collaborated on a hemispheric view to public health, and so I don't know if you know him from your time there, but he's an outstanding individual. Throughout Dr. Pennywell's career, she has proven to be a tireless innovator, always with students at the center. As director of the International Center since 2016, she has led thoughtful and creative ways to better support our international students. And how proud we are that there are so many of them here at this institution, benefiting from this great institution, but also we benefiting from their presence here at the institution. This includes pre-departure orientations, better programming to promote international students' mental health, and even celebrations for our graduating international students. And then there was COVID. Before many of us fully realized the implications of a pandemic on our daily lives, she was already proactively addressing the complexities and challenges ahead for our international students. And I know that they're very grateful for everything that you have done. She led the International Center in supporting thousands of University of Michigan students positioned all over the world, many of them unable to get here and to travel. It's important to note that many of these students were not eligible for the CARES Act funding. So she advocated for emergency funding to ensure that no students were left behind, no matter where they were living or what country was listed on their visas. She also made sure that University of Michigan had a voice in opposing proposed legislation and policies that might threaten international students' security and success. At a time when our entire world was locking down and enforcing barriers, she found ways to break through. Because of her efforts, Michigan is a more inclusive, and welcoming place for all. Dr. Pennywell, thank you and congratulations. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you, President Ono. Welcome to University of Michigan, and I wish you the best on your journey here. I'd like to greet my family and friends who are watching from out of state, colleagues who are on the live stream and here in the audience, as well as those who sent me such kind notes in the past few weeks. I am truly humbled to receive this award, to share it with Dr. Johnson, and to receive such lovely words and hear such lovely words. Thank you to my colleagues who nominated me, and to Dr. Bartaco and the PADCE Selection Committee. I hope you learned from the Record article about a little girl whose curiosity was sparked by all things cross-cultural and global. My parents and my teachers nurtured me throughout K through 12, and nurtured that curiosity, so it came as no surprise when I went to Indiana University and majored in Spanish, in Latin American and Caribbean studies, and in linguistics. It took some convincing, but my mother finally gave up on the dream that I'd become a teacher like she was. Instead, the experiences I had as an orientation leader, as a resident assistant, and through study abroad kind of led me on a career path that's gotten me here today. As a professional, I've had numerous opportunities to advise students, scholars on immigration matters, on adjustment to the United States, to create activities that engage them across diversity, and to implement programs that enrich learning. I'm lucky to have a career that has literally taken me around the globe, from traveling with students, conducting study abroad site visits, recruiting international students, visiting international partners overseas, and participating in some unique professional experiences in places as diverse as Belgium, Korea, and Qatar. I hope you also gathered from the video how positively I feel about the work we do as international educators at Michigan. We sit in a very special place and do a lot to support students. We facilitate and support their ability to go almost anywhere they wish in the world, to study, volunteer, conduct research, attend conferences, and deepen their perspective about the world and problems that we all grapple with. Our efforts directly and indirectly help fulfill their curiosity. So I'm grateful to have like-minded and committed colleagues in education abroad offices, in admissions offices, on the Travel Oversight Committee, in the Global Equity Center, the Global Health Equity Center, the English Language Institute, in the Provost Global Engagement Team, and of course, in the International Center. The work we do collectively provides a robust framework for the university to advance its mission and to develop globally competent citizens. I'm also fortunate to work in the Division of Student Life with dedicated, smart, and social justice-minded colleagues. Being housed within Student Life means that the International Center engages in discussions, larger discussions about DEI and belonging, community engagement, leadership, mental health and well-being, career development, among other student success measures. I'm pleased to be joined today by our Vice President, Dr. Martino Harmon, and our former Vice President AVP, Simone Himboldt-Taylor, who actually brought me to Michigan. Thank you. Simone's support also enabled me to chair the 2019 NAFSA Association of International Education Conference, which is one of my most significant volunteer leadership experiences to date. I'm still very proud of what my committees, some 400 presenters and volunteers, and the NAFSA staff did to put on such a great conference. The University of Michigan, in case you don't know, and the International Center have a long-standing relationship with NAFSA. from hosting one of its first meetings here in Ann Arbor some 75 years ago, to receiving the Simon Award in 2012, and to so many different leaders who've served in different capacities on committees within NAFSA. I remain inspired by NAFSA's mission to advance an interconnected world characterized by peace, social justice, and well-being for all. Finally, I have to recognize the International Center, those 30 wonderful people I get to work with. I recognize them for their dedication and thank them for their dedication and the expertise that they show in serving international students, scholars, and employees. The work we do is challenging. We manage thorny issues and complicated scenarios, but we are committed to doing that, and frankly, I think we do a pretty good job. But what I appreciate most about them is their sense of humor, the kindness they show one another, and the things that they do, big and small, to make our workplace a wonderful one every day. So with that, I thank you for this award. I'm full of gratitude and happiness, believe it or not.
Thank you very much, Tim and Judith, for everything you do and everything you've done. So we are now transitioning to the next part of our program. As more and more aspects of life have global impacts and are affected by global events, embracing, supporting, and fostering constructive global engagement is a critical aspect of educating the next generation of global citizens and an integral part of the university mission. Some of these global impacts are in front of us every day. Just look at gas prices out there. And the pandemic, which spread so quickly across the planet precisely because we are part of a global society. Just last week, I learned from a colleague in material sciences that the price of neon gas increased over tenfold in the past year because 2 plants in Ukraine were responsible for 50% of the worldwide production of highly pure neon gas. As a university, we are uniquely positioned to foster and support positive change amidst the opportunity that globalization brings. Indeed, we are among the institutions empowered with educating many of the global leaders who will shape the future. As I mentioned earlier, this fall, our campus welcomed an all-time record number of international students. The opportunities we present to all of our students, both domestic and international, to engage with each other will impact how the world will experience globalization just a few years from now. We must prepare all of our students to be leaders in a global society because that is the only society they will work in. And we must support cultural understanding and positive, inclusive interactions for the sake of our own future. On this note, I'm honored to pass the microphone to my colleagues, Dr. Johnson, Dr. Pennywell, and President Santaono, who will be discussing what role universities and academic institutions have and should have in fostering global engagement within communities where we live and learn. And let's get started.
So I have the first question. This really works. So President Ono, could you speak to the role of higher education leaders in championing internationalization efforts in the broadest sense of the term? And then what do you see as the challenges in terms of internationalization in higher education moving forward?
Well, thank you very much, Judith. And for me, this question resonates personally. I'll just take a minute to just give you some context of why international education is a passion of mine. Some of you may know that I come from an immigrant family, and that my very existence and my placement here on the stage wouldn't have happened without international education. Some of you may know that my father is a mathematician. He's a number theorist, and he immigrated to first the United States and then to Canada after the Second World War And the reason why that was made possible is that the then director of the Princeton Institute for Advanced Study, Robert Oppenheimer, asked the mathematician André Veilleux to identify a number of promising young Japanese mathematicians at universities to bring to the Princeton Institute for Advanced Study, a mecca for theoretical physics and pure mathematics. Einstein was there, and if you've been there, there's something called Einstein Drive. And that was transformative to our family. It was transformative, I think, in some ways to bilateral education, international education between Japan and the United States. My father moved to UBC and then to University of Pennsylvania and then to Johns Hopkins, all educational institutions. But it all rested upon that bilateral commitment that started with Oppenheimer asking André Veilleux to find young mathematicians from a conquered nation to come to the United States to benefit from the tremendous environment at one of the elite research institutions here in the US. It saved my family's life. They had nothing to their name. They came with everything in their one suitcase. And they've come back and become professors in American institutions. And all of their kids have now settled in the US, and we're all American citizens. And so it's very personal to me what international education means. Having grown up and become a university president, I can say firsthand that it's more important than ever before that we remain committed to international education. I was just in Washington, D.C., and we were discussing a National Academies publication that's just been released about how we have, over the past several years, been looking at international education, international research collaborations. And as you know, there are quite a few challenges to the second question with both the current administration and the previous administration looking at the threats of these international linkages to our national security. The National Academies, a blue ribbon panel, has actually come back and said this is not a time to actually put up barriers and to restrict these interactions, but it's a time to actually invest in them because the world needs to have these bridges more than ever before during these times of geopolitical tension. So I can say one of the biggest challenges is really for an educational institution to be at the forefront of that dialogue, to recall the powerful impact of international education on the world, on our responsibilities in terms of helping international students and citizens from around the world to share some of our wealth and some of our know-how for the betterment of the world. It's incredibly important at this time when we're faced with existential challenges that cannot be solved by a single university, a single nation, a single hemisphere. It is for that reason that I have always, especially recently, advocated for global and international education and research, because that's, to be very frank, absolutely necessary to solve these existential problems such as climate change.
Dr. Ono, like all the faculty, I'm very excited to kind of hear your personal story and your personal narratives. And I was just wondering if you could share with us some of your personal academic global experiences and how those are going to inform your vision for the University of Michigan and for its students.
Well, thank you very much. I think I kind of touched upon that a little bit, but my passion for international education is kind of eclectic because as a president of a major university like University of Michigan or UBC, you support the activities of all the faculty, leadership, students of those institutions. And if you look at the breadth and diversity of activities across all 19 schools at the University of Michigan, with all hundreds of partners, it is very diverse and it's eclectic. And I think that that's very powerful because a very interdisciplinary approach to international connections is really necessary to solve those global issues, but also will bring into the international effort, people from across all the campuses of the University of Michigan. So I'll answer your question by saying that I've personally been involved in a couple of things. One is that we were fortunate at UBC to be involved in something which was a major bridge between Canada and Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. And there's a foundation based in Toronto called the MasterCard Foundation that was created from the MasterCard credit card. It has quite a significant level of assets. And I illustrate this for a reason. I think your approach, which was really an example, is the bilateral exchange and bringing medical students and trainees from Michigan to Ghana and also vice versa. The issue with that effort, although very successful, is that we brought hundreds of students from Africa to UBC and we educated them. And that's a good thing. But the purpose of that international education was the hope that they would go back to Africa. The problem was, after almost a decade of that activity, almost all of them had stayed in Canada or in the US. And so that has transitioned to an effort where we are focusing more on how that network of about half a dozen institutions use those resources to build on the ground in Africa, which is something that has been part of your model from the very beginning that we're adopting in that effort. The second example has to do, once again, with climate change, which to me is one of my great passions. I'm fortunate to have been tapped by Janet Napolitano to lead something that was founded first by University of California and UBC, but now has about 26 universities in the hemisphere in North America, from Mexico all the way up to Canada. And she tapped me to take on that leadership of the University Climate Change Coalition, which has about 26 leading research universities, including the University of Michigan, with the view that the combined strength, intellectual and research capabilities of these research universities is essential to address the very audacious challenge of climate change. One of the things that I've hoped I can do here from Michigan is to start to build collaborations and bridges through international education, because student activism, student passion is really at the core of driving us and accelerating the progress that we need to solve this problem, because time is of the essence. It's an emergency. So one of the things I hope, to your question, I'll be able to accomplish here is to, through that leadership of a hemispheric climate change coalition, to build bridges with nations around the world, which will be required for us to solve this problem. We need Africa. We need China involved. We cannot solve this as North America alone. And there is a framework to that with an international global organization that I helped found called the U7 Plus Consortium, which President Macron of France was involved in, being sort of the sponsor of that. And I credit him for that. And it's called U7 Plus because the annual meetings and research strategy sessions are based at the host country of the G7 annual meetings. But the plus is very important because it includes countries beyond the G7 that will be important for to engage with as educational partners, because climate solutions require education and dissemination of that to each of the communities, but also research collaborations around the globe. I now have a question for you, Judith. How can we best prepare students to become globally competent?
Right. I think global competency and defining it really will vary from college to school. And there's definitely some different frameworks out there that are valuable. But I think for today, I think a framework of knowledge, skills, attitudes that we can cultivate in students while they're here as students, as well as to help them move on into the world of work and be successful grappling with these world, local, and national problems. So those knowledge, skills, and attitudes are hopefully developed through intentional measures, and that it's a multi-layered approach that we take. And one example of that is to be to really consider the curricular and the co-curricular when we're thinking about developing competencies. Obviously, the types of courses we offer and opportunities we offer, like education abroad, and the degree requirements, speak to a way of cultivating global competencies within the classroom. It's also the types of activities that we do. So how are we building critical thinking skills through assignments? Are we allowing students to navigate their own groups and go towards people they know? Or are we kind of intentionally setting up groups so that to increase diversity of minds and thoughts and conversations within those activities? Outside of the classroom, there's a ton of things that go on U of M's campus. The informal and formal interactions that students have in student organizations, in the residence halls, even in the gym, they all kind of lead toward opening minds. We also have formal events through lectures from the International Institute. There are wonderful centers there. Through UMS, we talked about the University Musical Society, have a really diverse lineup, and even the art that we have in UMMA, right? These are opportunities to really help students kind of broaden their worldview and learn things. One example from the International Center I'd like to bring up is our management of the Peace Corps Prep program, which is a certificate-based program, the curriculum is designed, it's designed to have curriculum, as well as engaged learning practices. So students, in order to complete the certificate, take 8 courses, 3 intercultural courses, 2 language courses, and 3 courses within kind of Peace Corps service work sectors. They do career and leadership development activities. And they also will do a minimum of 50 hours of service or an internship. So those things together are developing the knowledge, skills, and aptitudes and attitudes that we think will be helpful if they want to ever do the Peace Corps or any sort of service once they graduate. And I think the final part that I'd be remiss not to talk about is this interconnectedness between global competencies and diversity. And so what we're doing to make sure that all students have access to education abroad opportunities if they want to, and that's great funding models, financial aid, that kind of thing, as well as making sure that we have as diverse a classroom as possible by thinking about how do we bring students from places and countries that we haven't typically had as many students from, to have better representation, better contact and interactions between our students so that when they leave here, all students have had kind of this worldly experience through the things that we do both inside and outside the classroom.
I want to salute you because what you're doing is incredibly difficult. I was the deputy provost at Emory University. My boss was Earl Lewis, who had moved from Rackham to become the provost at Emory University. And one of the things that we focused on was were we being successful with our international efforts? And when we actually looked and surveyed students, international students, what we learned was that there was a diverse community of international students at that institution, and I love Emory. This is not a criticism of it. But what we heard was that it was more a quilt than an actual diverse, integrated community. And that what we heard from international students is that they came to this wonderful environment in Atlanta, and the Korean students stayed with the Korean students. And in fact, the international Korean students stayed in a different clique, if you will, than the domestic Korean students. And so, and I'll tell you that, almost all the students here at Michigan and I've spoken with hundreds already, are really happy with their experience. And so there must be something that you're doing that we can share in terms of integrating international students in a largely domestic student body. I'll tell you one thing, to be very frank. I received a direct message on Instagram from an international student. And in a little bit, it actually broke my heart because she said, "Welcome to the University of Michigan, Santa. It's so lovely to see you being participating in everything and fitting in." And she said, "I don't quite feel that way yet." Now it's relatively early in her semester here, and I said, "I need to connect you with people in the International Center." But kudos to you for for that, and obviously we can all refine and optimize our efforts to try to minimize students like that might be having a transition, having a difficult transition from a very different milieu from their home nation to Ann Arbor and Michigan, which is sometimes very different from their home nation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but kudos to you for everything that you're doing. To Tim, what is special about universities in developing global partnerships for education and capacity building?
So most of us have been lucky to spend our lives in academic institutions. So what is it that's so special about an academic institution? And when I talk, I often say that the two great institutions of Western civilization are the church and universities. They've been around for thousands of years. Why have they been so successful? And I think universities have been successful because obviously they've served a social need. They've developed capacity to educate the future. Leaders have trained. They've done research. They've done all kinds of important things, but they've dug deep roots. NGOs kind of go in. They're dependent on a grant. When the grant runs out, they leave. And even in some of the medical initiatives that we've had, people go in to fight Ebola and then they leave, and there's no capacity that's left behind. And I think the importance of developing sustainable capacity and developing in-country capacity to do the work. I mean, my goal with Ghana was for us to work there and leave and let it be sustainable, and that, in fact, is what's happened. And I think if we can kind of do that, universities want to see models. University presidents in the Global South, I remember the time that I was with Mary Sue Coleman and she was with the president of the University of Ghana, and he said, "Oh, you know, you're a public university." He said, "I've always worked with private universities like Harvard and Hopkins. I didn't know that there was a difference between private and public universities. That's very strange." He said, "Now I understand their differences." He also said, "Oh, and you own your own hospital. I'd like for us to own our own hospital." And his idea was to go ahead and they built the University of Ghana Teaching Hospital based on his recognition that somebody in the United States could own a university hospital, and he thought it was a really good idea, and it's been very successful. So I think that kind of capacity building is very, very strong. Because, you know, once there's a university hospital, and once there's a strong university, and once there's a department of OBGYN that has faculty that have tenure and are doing research, then things are going to stay the same. I think for me, doing this in an ethical fashion is really important. We need to understand the disparities that exist between the global north and the global south, and we need to learn that what we need to come to know that what we can learn from doing global work is also pertinent domestically. I have students that come to me and say, you know, I'd really like to do global work. I understand that you're interested in maternal mortality. I really can't afford to go very far. You know, what could I do? And I say, well, you know, Muskegon has the highest maternal mortality in the state. Why not go work in Muskegon? You know, the kind of work that I do in Ghana, I think is very applicable to Ethiopia, but it's also applicable to Detroit. It's also applicable to Flint. And one of the biggest problems in Africa is how do they get people to work in the rural areas? Sound familiar? I mean, so the problems are global, and some of the solutions we can learn by doing this global work. And I think we can have students who do the global work and bring that knowledge back home, who may engage in global work for a short period of time and then become very domestically invested, but who continue to do their global work as well. And I hope that our students can look at the way Michigan has done its global work and commit to doing it in a way that is mutually beneficial, where they make a contribution that's sustainable where they do the work, whether it's in Muskegon or whether it's in Accra.
Thank you very much, Dr. Johnson. Over to you, Valeria.
Yes, I wanted to follow up on a comment you made, President Ono. You said this is not the time to create barriers to international exchanges and collaborations. And I think in this room, we are all on that page. Indeed, for us, it's never the time to create any barrier. However, it definitely feels that political entities, government agencies sometimes are really increasing the amount of regulation they are trying, and the barriers that they're trying to put on international exchanges. And Judith herself had to fight quite a bit, I would say a year and a half ago, so that international students wouldn't be blocked from coming here. But even more broadly than that, think about research collaboration are becoming highly regulated. Is there something we can do as a university to be more aligned with this entity? On one end, I understand their concerns, and we are considered this free spirit who share every idea with everyone, and so need to be controlled a bit. Can we provide a little bit more confidence so that these barriers don't come up as much?
Well, if I might
What can we
respond, in my very first week at University of Michigan, I visited the Washington office of University of Michigan, and it's an outstanding group that focuses on research policy, but also on advocacy to the federal government. So one of the ways that faculty, staff, and students and myself can contribute to the dialogue is in Washington, because many of the policies are occurring there, as you've pointed out. And we talked about this on day one in my first week, because it's incredibly important. And ironically, it's incredibly important for national competitiveness. The problem, as you point out, is there's a bipartisan view that's introducing those sorts of barriers and restrictions. The National Academy's proposal, which I support 100%, is that if you look back to 1965 to 70-something, at the launch by Kennedy of the Apollo program, with the Apollo 11, as you know, the Neil Armstrong walking on the moon in '69. I remember it like yesterday. That the approach then of the government was not to introduce so much in terms of barriers, but to invest in research. At that time, more of it was in universities, less of it was in companies. Now, it's flipped so that about 25% of research is in universities, 75% is in companies. So I think but still universities are the seed corn for knowledge transfer and commercialization to those companies. So universities like University of Michigan have an incredibly powerful platform to align visibly with the National Academy's proposal that this is not a time that we should be moving away from restrictions and barriers and actually doing what happened then with the moonshot investment in making sure that we were as good as we could be, and that the other part of the National Academy's recommendation is that this is not a time to restrict, aside from national security secrets, but in terms of knowledge. The more we're engaged with universities around the world, the more we will be part of the cutting edge of knowledge. The more we actually look inward and introduce barriers, we will cut ourselves out from what is now increasingly a global knowledge platform. And so one of the ways, to answer your question, that we can advocate for that is to support those National Academy recommendations.
Thank you. And then I wanted to also ask a brief question to the two of you. It's a comment that Tim Johnson made last week. He said the pandemic as being a reboot of international experience. So we have a reset button, we're coming back alive again, and we could change how we do international experiences by leveraging new opportunities. One of the ways that have been discussed quite a bit in the past 2 years is that they can be more virtual. That was kind of a direct byproduct that people couldn't really travel. And I just don't believe you understand the culture via Zoom. It just doesn't happen. You need to be, it's not just about the classroom. You need to be immersed in the place. You need to be talking to the people. And you need to be talking to the people who are not affiliated with the local university, who are a very special group. So are there any suggestion or idea or opportunities that you see as we come out of the pandemic in engaging in new and improved ways in our international exchanges? Think about our students going and maybe our students coming. Tim, Judith. or President Ono. It's open to anyone who has suggestions.
I think when I think about international students especially, it's so important for us to get them into the community for service opportunities, to make sure that they also have access to internships, because going to Muskegon actually can really deepen one's understanding of the issues that they're learning in the classroom. So I think the more that we do to engage students in meaningful, engaged learning opportunities with their fellow classmates, and the more that we instill upon our domestic students that they have a unique opportunity. With 17% international students here,
Yep.
they have a unique opportunity to get to know the world, and that they should be making that a priority in their education in order to be successful moving on. So we just keep pushing. We work with Ginsberg. We work with different places on campus to make sure that they have opportunities.
So the key is to engagement outside of the lecture, outside of the classroom.
And to make sure that we're doing that inside the classroom as well, but definitely outside as well.
Yeah.
I think we have a huge opportunity as we think about disruptive change to shift power to our students and to make them be part of the change agents. I think the millennials as a group, as a generation, are very committed to global work. They've lived through the pandemic in ways that we haven't. They understand technology in ways that we don't. They can manipulate computers and information in ways that I can't even imagine. And I think we need to empower our students to be part of the change. They need to be part of the leadership of the organization. And I think they're the ones that have got the terrific ideas. They're the ones who kind of understand where some of these opportunities are. And I think we really need to, I mean, when I was a student, I just went to school. That's what the baby boomers did, right? We went to school, and then we got jobs for 30 years at institutions that we loved. But I think we've got millennial students who are very interested in change and being change agents. They're very interested in being global citizens. And with the challenges we face as a nation, both domestically and with respect to China and with respect to Russia and with respect to what's going on, it's those students that I think are going to make the change. And I think we need to push the agency for that change down at a much faster rate than we did. I mean, we don't need to wait for those people to be 60 to put them in charge of things. And I think that's an opportunity that we have to be really disruptive. Hopefully that makes the faculty uncomfortable. But that's what the faculty needs to be, is the faculty needs to be uncomfortable. Yeah. And I think now's the time to really push our students and give them the opportunity to be change agents, and I hope that's something that you can do, sir.
Well, Timothy, I'll say that actually, whatever we think, the students, the millennials, will drive the process. One other aspect of them that I experienced as a university president is that they're very passionate, and they will demand that we listen. And I think the best way to move the institution forward is to listen. And so I really want to meet with the students. The University of British Columbia, any progress that it made over the past 6.5 years is to some degree a direct outcome of listening to the students. And so I agree with you 100%.
Thank you.
Our role as administrators and staff are really to support those and help facilitate what they want to see and provide them opportunities to do so in meaningful ways.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank everyone who came here today. Thank you for the very good turnout. And I would like to thank our President Ono and congratulate Professor Johnson and Dr. Pennywell. Thank you very much, everyone.